In this video, we're going to talk about Babylon. I was having a conversation the other day with someone who said something to the effect of Babylon being America, and I thought that was really interesting. And it reminded me that I came across some sort of movie that I have not seen, but I remember that they were associating Babylon with America. So I don't know if that's where this false doctrine came from, or if it came from somewhere else, and then that's what informed the movie. Doesn't really matter. It's a false doctrine, and I'm going to demonstrate why. Babylon comes from the Hebrew word Babylon. It represents confusion. That is the outline of biblical usage, and this is coming from Strong's Concordance. This is not a commentary. It is a concordance. So that is an account of the biblical usage of the word. So the first thing that is talked about is that this Babylon refers to confusion. It also is referenced as a very large and famous city, the residence of the Babylonian kings, situated on both banks of the Euphrates. Cyrus had formerly captured it, but Darius, I'm sorry, there's a lot of words in here that I'm not going to say right, Hystaspes threw down its gates and walls, and Xerxes destroyed the temple of Belize. At length, the city was reduced to almost solitude, the population having been drawn off by the neighboring Seleucia, built on the Tigris by Seleucus Nicanor. Told you. It is of the territory of Babylonia and allegorically of Rome as the most corrupt seat of idolatry and the enemy of Christianity. So we're going to take a look at that piece right there, because ultimately we know from the Old Testament, we know that we're talking about a territory. We know that we're talking about confusion, the confusion that was established in language as a result of them building the Tower of Babel. But I want you to continue to hold that theme of confusion in your mind with regard to Babylon. And of course, God's established a territory or a city or whatever to talk about, is that a nation to him, or are these nations to something else, of the world, to Satan? But the most important one for us is ultimately what why he established physical, tangible symbolism in order to teach us spiritual truth, in order to teach us spiritual symbolism so that we know the signs of the times, we know what's going on. So, allegorically of Rome as the most corrupt seat of idolatry and the enemy of Christianity. Revelation 14:8, we see that a second angel followed and said, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries." In the word, we know that a woman is used to represent a church. We know that wine is used in order to represent doctrine. There's one good woman, and that is Zion. And there are many bad women. There's Babylon the Great and the prostitutes that bore out of her. There's the harlot that's seen riding the beast. These are bad women, bad churches. There's good doctrine, true doctrine, good wine, and there's also bad wine that this church causes all of the nations to drink, the maddening wine of her adulteries. So this is a bad woman. This is a woman who gives wine that is maddening wine. Elsewhere in the Bible, we see that God talks about people staggering drunk and reeling with beer and wine. There's vomit all over the tables. Nothing is clean. There's, just every spot is filled with filth. And then again, there's another piece here that he talks about with regard to adultery. And when he's talking in Revelation regarding the harlot, he says that she fornicates with the kings of the earth. So this is an adulterous woman. She is immoral, riding a beast, which is a government or a system of governments, fornicating with the kings, with those rulers of those governments. It is a bad church that is deeply involved in government, false doctrines, and she is involved with many nations, which made all the nations, actually. The word says all the nations. So she's involved with all the nations, making them drink the maddening wine of her adulteries. Revelation 16:19, the great city split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled with the wine of the fury of his wrath. Now we're going to read the entire chapter of Revelation 17. This chapter is regarding Babylon, the prostitute on the beast, the harlot on the beast. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adultery." So again, that same language. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman is sitting on a beast. The church is sitting on a system of government, or governments, plural. And this is a bad woman. We know that because God is referring to her as a prostitute or a harlot. And the good woman, Zion, he refers to as being pure. The beast is covered with blasphemous names and has 7 heads and 10 horns. I'm trying to think of the name of the video in which I reconcile or I talk about Daniel and Revelation. I think it might be called The United States in the End Times. That might be a good video for you to watch if you want to understand more about these 10 horns and 7 heads, etc. That would be a good video to watch, actually, because it will very clearly demonstrate for you that Babylon is papal Rome. We go through the different kingdoms by process of elimination. There is no other option but that for Babylon to be papal Rome. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand filled with the abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of all prostitutes and the abominations of the earth. Now, here's what I want you to understand. The reformists, many of them, are willing to tell you that Babylon the Great is Catholicism, is papal Rome. But they absolutely never talk about the prostitutes that bore out of her. They never talk about the fact that Babylon the Great is a mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth, that counterfeit Christianity bore out of her. And I've talked about this in many videos, that those who were interested in reforming were reforming the Catholic Church. It doesn't make sense to be focused on reforming a counterfeit church when God already established a true church. He already established the truth. God says repeatedly from the beginning to the end of the Bible, "Return to me." He never said, go and reform a mud pit, because what happens when you do that? You can't, take a pile of mud in your hand and wash a pile of mud clean. You have to rebuke it altogether, and then you return to the purity of God's word. So what happened when people were reforming, what they were doing is they were maintaining focus on Catholicism, and that's what they were trying to reform. It wasn't about the purity of God's truth, or they would have just gone to God's truth. They would have been focused on return, but that doesn't bring them any glory, does it? And so now we have all of these churches that are focused on man's doctrine: Lutheranism, Calvinism, Wesleyan. I don't know, what would you call someone who follows John Knox? I have no idea. I don't know enough about it. I don't really want to. You have a bunch of denominations that has completely confused everything. And isn't that interesting that Babylon stood for confusion to begin with? Confused the language, confused the wine. It confounded the people. Do you understand where I'm going here? Now, when we talk about the churches, we're thinking, oh, which church is true? None of them. None of them are true, because there is only one church, and it was what God established. There were no denominations because there was only one church. That entire system of Babylon bore out of the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is what established this institution, this system of churches. And you see the fruit of that today. You see that if the Spirit of God is behind any of those churches, then why are they bearing this fruit? Money has become the root of many different evils. They dilute the word. They lead you back to the law that was already fulfilled, the parts of the law that were already fulfilled, such as tithing. That was associated with sacrifice, and Christ fulfilled sacrifice. I don't need to go through all of the sins of the prostitutes that bore out of her. You see them, and if you want to understand them, go to Revelation 2-3, because Christ rebukes his people for what they're doing. Now understand that in Revelation 2-3, what Christ refers to as churches are respective assemblies are assemblies in respective areas: Smyrna, Pergamum, Philadelphia, etc. He's not referring to denominations, or he would have referred to them as denominations. But as it is, when John was here, that was not a thing. Nevertheless, Christ is rebuking these believers in respective areas for what they're doing. And it very much refers to what we are doing and what we are doing in these different churches. So there is correlation there, but you need to understand that that's not these denominations, this institution of churches as a business. This is not what God established. If you look only at the use of money, when you're looking at, Paul's story, for example, is probably where we see the most exchange of money happening. Paul went to collect, or Acts, Paul went to collect the money for the church, for the people of the church, in order to share in what they had. You see that again in Acts, that everyone brought what they had together and everyone was provided for. This is exactly what God established from the very beginning. There are to be no poor among you. There's no reason anyone should be poor. Y'all take care of each other. And that's what he's returning to. That's not the way it's being used in this institution of churches. Otherwise, there would not be mega churches and pastors who are making millions of dollars. There would not be this watering down of God's doctrine, because they would be single-minded for what they're doing for him. But look, I don't see any of them, no one's being provided for equally there, are they? That's not what's happening. They're living the worldly American dream. They're living capitalism within churches. I mean, that's really silly. Not at all what was established. Not at all what the apostles were doing or the early church was doing. These so-called leaders, these false teachers, false prophets, they're concerned about themselves. They're not concerned about truth. They're not concerned about shepherding correctly or making sure that God's people understand truth, that they're in the right posture, that they're ready when Christ returns. Nope. I mean, I can tell you from my personal experience, when I was baptized into counterfeit Christianity, it was a baptism mill. I didn't even understand what it was that I was doing. I believed in Christ, so I wanted to, do what I was supposed to do. But it was it's being taught in a very, very superficial way, with absolutely no concern for the life of God's people. And so for that reason, I firmly believe that is why it is that God has me so separated from any of this that he has me doing, being for myself, that he pulled me out of careers, had me give up very lucrative careers in order to do a ministry, not making money, not, having given up all of that status and glory that I once had to do something that is so lowly, totally for free. But listen, I mean, there's nothing competing with God's desire. There's nothing competing with his will in me. And I believe that that's how he wants it. I believe that that's right. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard, but I believe that it's right. Verse 6, I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. So this is a church that has killed God's people. She's drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. This has already happened and is going to happen again. Spanish Inquisition. Papal Rome has historically persecuted, tortured, and murdered God's people, Christians and Jews alike. So that part of it should not be confusing to us at all either. It's the prostitutes that bore out of her that you haven't even heard about, right? Because if you've been in counterfeit Christianity, they don't get it. They like completely skip over that, don't they? They're not. Why are they not talking about that? Who are the prostitutes that bore out of her if it's not them? So when I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and the beast, and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, but when he does, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is the 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. Now that's the part where that other video would come in handy for you, because it eliminates, it breaks down the kings that rise, and then who overcomes the next king, and then who overcomes the next kingdom. And it, by process of elimination, you cannot deny that this is papal Rome. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire, for God has put it in their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. So again, this is not a physical city. Remember that when God refers to us as Israel, Jerusalem, Zion, are we a literal city? No, we're a city that's been set apart to him. And if you think about, the people that he called to himself originally, the Israelites, a small city in this big world. We are a small city in this big world. As a matter of fact, Matthew 7:13 through 14 tells us, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. And as we're seeing, and as I talk with people with whom I'm working, and they begin to understand counterfeit Christianity, and they begin to understand what they've ingested, and they start getting spiritual eyes, and they actually experience rebirth, because just because you have claimed to be Christian for many years does not mean you've been reborn yet. That is a collaborative process between you and God. And there's certain fruit that comes from that. You have to be being moved by his spirit. You have to be on a continual trajectory of growth if you have him in you and you've been changed by his spirit. And so what many people tell me when they begin doing this and they experience rebirth and they experience those spiritual eyes, they start looking around and going, my goodness, he was not kidding. He was not kidding that there are very few Christians on this earth. And he will indeed turn to them, and they are going to be shocked. We think that, I don't know, maybe you don't think this, but I kind of used to hear this scripture and think, well, that'll only be like the obvious ones, like the Joel Osteens and the Kenneth Copelands, right? Who God is going to say, many are going to say to him, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy with you? Didn't we, eat with you? Prophesy in your name, excuse me. And I thought they're going to know, but no, the scripture is indicating that they don't even realize it. They think they're Christian. That's why they're saying to him, hey, but didn't we do these things? But wait a minute, I'm one of yours, aren't I? Nope. So there is a clear indication that these people have ingested counterfeit Christianity. Counterfeit Christianity is in their heart. And it's very interesting that God says to them, depart from me, evildoers, I never knew you. He's got to be in your heart, and you have to be relating with him in order for him to know you and you to know him. So again, I talked to you about the difference between wanting to know about him and filling your mind with a bunch of information, albeit false information, through counterfeit Christianity about God, rather than learning from him who he is. That's the only way you can actually learn about him, is through actually having a relationship with him. So these people are going to have a bunch of useless information about him, but they will not know him and he will not know them. That's how serious this is. I mean, that is serious. And as you think about people who you know in counterfeit Christianity, you can see that. You can see it. And I want to encourage you to really think about what that looks like, what it's going to look like when he says that, why it is that the word is written in the way that it is, why it is that he said these things the way that he did. He wasn't mincing words. He wasn't exaggerating. He was saying there are a whole lot of counterfeit believers, and they're going to try to get in that door, and they are not going to enter it, and they're going to be stunned. Why? Because God sends them a powerful delusion because they didn't love truth. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. This is a great city. Just as we are a small city, this is a great city that rules over the kings of the earth. They drink up her maddening wine. They drink up her false doctrines, her worldly ideologies, pagan practices, adulterations of God's word. She fornicates with the world. So pay attention to the way that people are speaking, because the world, that way of speaking, I'm going to tell you something from personal experience. The minute I started speaking like this, it got real clear who has the Spirit of God and who doesn't. Christians themselves accepted the message that I shared, the things that I taught when I was of the world before I knew Christ, when I spoke on the authority of the world. Self-proclaimed Christians would rather hear that message than what I say now. They don't want to hear this. And Christ told us that that's the truth. He told us that that was going to happen, that people who live in darkness do not come to the light because they are afraid of being exposed. And when that happens inside of you, when you start speaking this way, when his light is activated in you, when he places his light on the lampstand that he's built in you, when you begin, when you're reborn, you're going to notice that people walk the other way. They're not in contact with you the way that they used to be, if at all. They get a little anxious. You start to feel that anxiety inside of them. Some of them give you the superficial lip service, and then they just kind of like drop off. You're going to see what I'm talking about if you haven't already. If you have, put a post so we can confirm this. This is what happens. And you know it's happening because God lets you know what's happening. But it doesn't make it any less grievous. It actually makes it very sad and very eye-opening that this is where things are at. That this is truly the difference between those who are in him and those who are not. Those who are not cannot, will not accept his message. Those who are not cannot, will not come towards the light because they are afraid of being exposed. That's why you feel that anxiety from them. Revelation chapter 18. After I saw this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice he shouted, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable animal. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries." Then I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she is given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Pay her a double portion from her own cup. Give her as much torment and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. In her heart she boasts, 'I sit enthroned as a queen. I'm not a widow. I'll never mourn.' Therefore, in one day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her. So understand, this is not a physical woman. This is not a literal woman. So how do you pay back this system? You call it out. You expose it. I'm paying her back double for what she's given me. This is the covering. This is the facade. This is the lie. All those years that we believed in that lie, all those years that we were told that this is what salvation, you've already been saved, you're just not believing enough. All those years that we were lied to about the covenant that we were supposed to be picking up, all those years that we didn't have healing and that we lived with syndromes and baloney that the world told us was depression and anxiety and all of this stuff, all these things that we have suffered with unnecessarily, because if we had truth, we would have healed. Technically, it's not unnecessarily God was building us, but you see what I'm saying? If there had been truth, if they had spoken truth, if they had been more concerned about God's people than feeding on their flesh and taking for themselves, maybe there would have been healing for the daughter of his people. Expose her. Leave her naked. Strip her naked. The word also says that. So understand, what is that? This is the covering. This is the facade. This is the lie. This is the confusion. This is what's confounding. What does it mean to strip her naked and burn her with fire? What is fire? God is a consuming fire. This is not a physical woman. You are exposing. You are speaking truth. You are calling it out. You are telling people, come out of her. You're sharing your testimony on how God brought you out of her by cleaning up your heart. That's Babylon. And those who don't come out of her are going to bear in her plagues. Her sins are piled up to heaven. They're going to bear in her plagues because they have the mark of the beast, because that is the mark, is ingesting and holding on to counterfeit Christianity in our hearts, so that it then is coming out where? On our forehead and our right hand. Our right hand representing our works, our forehead representing our thoughts, our mouths declaring what we believe, speaking on what's in our hearts. Why does Romans 10:10 tell you that you're going to be justified by your heart and you're going to declare with your mouth? It doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to come up to you and say, hey, do you believe that Jesus Christ is Lord? Do you believe that he rose, that he, died and rose 3 days later? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could, but right now, I am declaring with my mouth what the truth is. I'm declaring with my mouth what's in my heart. I'm declaring the truth and the faith that's in my heart and the basis for which I'm sealed. And I didn't receive that from myself. And I didn't receive that from man. I received it from the Holy Spirit and his word. Verse 9, when the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. Terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry. Now listen, I want to tell you something. You're seeing right here, very close to where God says, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins. I don't want you to misunderstand that when you see Babylon fall, then it's time to come out of her. No, the time is now. The time is now for you to come out of her. By the time Babylon falls, we will have been resurrected. So you don't want to wait until then, because that means you're here. That means you took the mark. So don't start waiting for that. I'm telling you right now, you got to pray. And you need to come out of her. You need to pray and ask God to take counterfeit Christianity out of you, and you got to receive that. So when the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared in her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her, terrified at her torment. They will stand far off and cry, woe, woe to you, great city, you mighty city of Babylon. In 1 hour your doom has come. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, because no one buys their cargoes anymore, cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen, purple silk, and scarlet cloth, every sort of citron wood, and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense, myrrh, and frankincense, of wine and olive oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, and human beings sold as slaves. They will say, the fruit you longed for is gone from you. All your luxury and splendor have vanished, never to be recovered. The merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. In 1 hour, great wealth has been brought to ruin. Listen to it. He's talking about worldly wealth. He's talking about those who are selling out to this, right? Those who are more concerned about belonging to the world and having what the world values than they are about the joy that's set before them in eternity. It's foolish. It's foolish when you look at it from that perspective. Ridiculous, especially if what I hear from God is true, which is the witnesses are here right now, and they'll be here for another 3.25 years, and then there's going to be another 3.5 years, plus until God is here, until he comes for us. What's another 7 years, you guys? You can do anything for 7 years. And this is for your eternity. This is for you to be able to be with your family and have a place in God's temple, to be priests that reign with him for 1,000 years. I mean, that alone should be worth it. But we're talking about eternity. You can do anything for 7 years. And the chances are you're not even going to live another 7 years. Sorry to say it like that, but it's the truth. And you don't want to be here. You don't want to be here. Every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea will stand far off. When they see the smoke ever burning, they will exclaim, "Was there ever a city like this great city?" They will throw dust on their heads and with weeping and mourning cry out, "Woe, woe to you, great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she's been brought to ruin. Rejoice over her, you heavens. Rejoice, you people of God. Rejoice, apostles and prophets, for God has judged her with the judgment she imposed on you." Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, "With such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. The music of harpists and musicians, pipers and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No worker of any trade will be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of a bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's important people. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray. In her was found the blood of prophets and of God's holy people, of all who have been slaughtered on the earth." So look, even though this is represented in papal Rome and the prostitutes that bore out of her, you got to understand that this system is being driven by the Antichrist Spirit. That Antichrist Spirit comes in many deceptive, hides behind many deceptions, many facades, spiritual healing, spiritual medicine. Someone was telling me the other day that, Christians are bringing in, chakra healing, Enneagram, sound baths. I mean, why? Why? How do you not know that this is not of Christ? If you're truly in ministry for him, how do you not know that? I mean, I shared the other day that when the Father first started drawing me to the Son, I was still holding on to crystals when I prayed to him, bringing out a crystal with me to my patio table while I read the Bible and did my journaling. Listen, if you have him in you and you truly are receiving his ministry, you have to be on a continuous trajectory of healing and change and growth. And he's going to purge that out of you. He's going to take it out of you. There's no way that that's going to continue to remain. And then you're going to open up a mega church and say that you're, preaching on the word of God and joining with all of these satanic practices. You're not going to do that. And your doctrine is going to get cleaned up. If you listen to this channel on a daily basis, if you listen to this channel regularly, then you're my witness that God has me on a continuous trajectory of change on a daily basis. There's not a single day that God's not building something in me. I mean, you can even see in the last few weeks that the things that he's taught me, he has built on and built on and built on. Every single day he's doing something in me. You know why? Because every single day I'm sitting with him. I'm being used by him. So that idea in counterfeit Christianity that you can't always be filled by the Holy Spirit, you can't always be walking in the Spirit, that is a lie. We are designed as a temple for God's Spirit. How could that possibly be true? That we can't always walk in the Spirit? I don't see any biblical precedent for that. All right, with the understanding that you have of who this is, of this being, papal Rome started this, but there's the spirit of the Antichrist that is behind all of these lies, all of the false doctrines that have been established on the earth. and all of the prostitutes that bore out of papal Rome, all of these counterfeit churches, the institution of churches, counterfeit Christianity, which, by the way, is all the world. It's just the world, guys. There's no difference between counterfeit Christianity and the world. The only difference is that they're claiming that it's Christian. So now, understanding that the maddening wine of her adulteries, the wine is false doctrine, the woman is a church, the prostitutes are counterfeit churches, the adulteries and fornications mean that she is deeply involved in the world. She is committing adultery against God, against the one she claims to be married to, and is fornicating with the enemy of God, with Satan. Now, understanding that, I want you to listen to chapter 19. After this, I heard what sounded like the roar of a great multitude in heaven shouting, "Hallelujah! Salvation and glory and power belong to our God, for true and just are his judgments. He has condemned the great prostitute who corrupted the earth by her adulteries. He has avenged on her the blood of his servants." Remember again, papal Rome is going to rise, but don't think that the rest of Babylon is not going to join her. They're going to hand over their power to her. They're going to reconcile with her. That's why I focus on this message that Francis, their pope, has been preaching of reconciliation, reconciling Catholicism with all of the enemies that it created, right? Through its abuse, through its rape and murder and all the things that it's done to children and other people and to Jews and to Christians. There's that message of reconciliation. Let's just put this behind us, all that stuff that we did during the Spanish Inquisition. Let's be reconciled. Because that's what God wants us to do. No, he doesn't. God does not want you to be reconciled with her. Sounds sweet, but it's a lie. And we are not all brothers and sisters. We are not all children of God. You need to discern that. He's preaching a message of secularization, and he's doing it not based on the word. He's doing it based on Thomas Jefferson, who, talked about separation of church and state. That's not a biblical concept, by the way. Personally, I believe that there should be a separation of church and state because I don't need anyone telling me how to be Christian, especially not at this wicked time in history. So there's a bunch of crazy people, on one end saying that they want, this combination of church and state. I don't want that. I want, the people of God are supposed to return to God, and then he will put his spirit in our leaders. He's the one who chooses our leaders, and he puts the spirit that we've chosen in those leaders. But I want you to understand very clearly what Francis is doing. It's strategic because the Catholic Church doesn't want the finger on them. They don't want people looking at them and saying they're the Antichrist. So what he's doing is he's trying to deflect attention, making people think that this is a biblical idea, which obviously we know that the woman is riding a beast, is riding the government. And certainly Thomas Jefferson's statement regarding church and state being separate may have been informed by that, but the Pope is speaking on Thomas Jefferson's authority, not on the authority of the word, first of all. Second of all, Francis does not believe that for 1 second, or he would pull himself out from being constantly involved in government. Papal Rome has always been combined as church and state. There is no reason why Francis is attending these summits with all of the other kings of the earth. So he doesn't even believe in what he's saying. He's just trying to take that focus off of the Catholic Church as being the Antichrist. And he's doing it in the name of secularism. That's weird, don't you think? That's kind of a weird thing. He's not speaking on the word, hey, look, we need to return to God. This is what he says. And then he will heal us. He'll heal our land. He'll appoint good leaders over us. No, he's not saying any of that. He speaks on his own authority, on the authority of man and the authority of the world. I never hear anything truly Christian coming out of that man's mouth. It's always some distortion. And the third message that he's preaching right now is integration of sin. We don't want to marginalize the LGBTQ plus community. We want to integrate them into society. And by society, he means the church, even though he does not have the authority to speak for the church. But he has certainly led a lot of people into thinking they're part of it, hasn't he? And so because he has a platform to lead people astray, he distorts things like this. He distorts the message into sounding like seeming like a lamb, but sounding like a dragon. The message of the dragon. That is why these things are happening right now at this point in history, because we're almost there. And so it's got to build, but you have to have open eyes. Otherwise, you're going to hear this message and you're going to go, it couldn't possibly be Papal Rome because, the Pope is preaching this message of no church and state. Well, why don't you look at his behavior? What's the behavior been of the Catholic Church? What did I told you in another video that if you want to understand the schemes of the devil, you need to take a look at certain things that he does through man, right? You got to take a look at the character and the strategies that he exercises through or executes through man. So, for example, what the world calls a narcissist, what the world calls love bombing. He's going to do things in order to lower your guard so that he can get control. Lower your guard, like looking like a lamb, but speaking like a dragon, making it seem like he's completely hard. He's just a harmless old man. Oh, isn't he sweet? He just loves everyone, doesn't judge anyone. Baloney. He doesn't judge the world because he's of the world, but he is 100% setting up Christians. I've talked about that on this channel. You can look those videos up. His language, his ideologies are setting Christians up to be persecuted. And I've told you before that the enemy does not care whether you believe in a counterfeit Christ, a false Messiah, or you just outright say that you're a Satan worshiper, because they're one and the same. It's all the same. As long as it's not truth, he didn't care. He'll use any form of falsehood. As long as I was continuing to pray with a crystal and attribute power to that crystal, I was still engaging in idolatry. I was still placing something before God. Even something as like dumb with no power. I mean, it's nothing, right? A false god is nothing. A rock is nothing. But if that's what's in my heart, it means something to God. So it needs to mean something to us. So again, in summary, Babylon, the mother of all prostitutes, the harlot that's riding the beast, that began with the institution of churches, the prostitutes that bore out of her. It includes the maddening wine and doctrines, the fornications with the world, the adaptation of false gods, pagan practices, pagan sacrifices, manipulations of the word. There is also a version of this that has happened within Judaism, Reformed Judaism, rabbinical commentaries. It does not make any sense for us to be using any of that. If they did not have the ability to see the Messiah, if they were not given the ability to know who the Messiah is, we should not be ingesting any of it. And Paul already told us that as far as that they are loved on account of the patriarchs, but they are enemies as far as the gospel is concerned. I don't want you to think, as many do, that there's some extra secret to being engrafted into the Commonwealth of Israel, that there's some secret in being an ethnic Jew. The word very clearly says that Jews are those who are Jews inwardly through circumcision, not outwardly. There's no other book, there's no other practice or doctrine or commentary or anything else that you need. God's Spirit and His Word. That's it. He's enough. He's enough to teach you. You don't need to step outside of that. And then you discern His people. You discern His shepherds and His teachers and His servants. It is good and right for people to speak on their testimony, but their testimony has to line up with the Word, and they have to be speaking on the authority of God's Word. They cannot speak for themselves, and if there's something that they're taking for themselves, you need to be wary. You got to discern it. Remember as well that the system of Babylon is being run by the Antichrist. So in all things, you want to be thinking about what is the agenda of the Antichrist and what are his schemes. He's going to show up. He's going to love bomb you. He's going to show up in this, charismatic or sweet, gentle, lamb-like way. But you need to discern the message. You need to test that spirit in a system, in a person, etc. And you've got to make sure that they are from God. And the only way to do that is by His Spirit in you. You got to live by His Spirit in you. You got to learn how to do that. You got to learn how to live in the heart and spirit by His Spirit. And you also have to come to understand and learn how you've been living in the flesh, what it feels like when you're living in the flesh, so that you know the difference between jumping around from heart and spirit to flesh. If you feel afraid and you feel activated, you're living in the flesh, and you've been living by a different spirit, because God's spirit is one of peace. When you lose that peace and you start feeling afraid, you're going to start to have an experiential understanding of where you're living at a given time, of whether you're living in the heart and spirit or you're living in the flesh. You're going to know that by when you lose peace. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.